But
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Kera Dangerous Talk. For this episode, I have a good friend here, columnist, activist, theologian, Gerald Perreira. But I wanted to have you on the show today to talk about something very important. You know, I see people all over concerned about celebrity and everything that's going on in the lives of this and that person. But I feel like where we really need to be drawing our attention to is international matter conflict that's going on right now. If you're watching the news or paying attention at all, you are aware of the conflict right now between Ukraine and Russia. Now, I don't know about you, but anytime Russia name comes up at any kind of conflict, you know, a radar kind of goes off, an antenna goes off in my head, and I'm like, okay, should be concerned about this. So I called in the big guns today. And Gerald, I just want you to kind of give us a one-on-one on what's going on today because it can get confusing. It's a lot of information out there. So we're going to break it down for the people today. How you feel about that?
Yes, certainly. You know, you just mentioned, sister, you made a very important point when you say the minute you mention Russia, you know, things go off. You hear the radars and people start to raise their eyebrows and so. But you know, what I'm going to try to do is to look at this thing both in a historical, give the historical perspective and look at where we are and how because at the end of the day, as Africans, you know, how does this play out? How does this impact on the motherland and Africans in the Americas and the Caribbean? You know, I think for my brothers and sisters in the United States, my African brothers and sisters, it's important for them to know that, you know, we had two great personalities, such as the great African American singer. But before I get to him, in Russia, the Patrice Lumumba University, you know, the Russians have a university named after Patrice Lumumba, the great African revolutionary from the Congo. And you know, the West, United States imperialism and the West got rid of him. And he was seeking Soviet assistance, right? The same happened with Jamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt when he was seeking the Soviet Union, to get Soviet help to build the Aswan Dam. And imperialism went after Nasser. They went after Kwame Nkrumah for building relations with Russia. They went after Sekou Touré. They went after, and now you see in Mali, the government in Mali has kicked out the French, right? And they've invited the Russians in to help them combat the so-called Islamic militants in the Sahel region. Why I mention this to you is, if you look at Russia, right, what our relation that we as Africans have with Russia is different to our relations with the United States. Okay? As Walter Rodney pointed out, when we are speaking about Western imperialism, we have to be specific here and speak about Western imperialism, because Russia never went into Africa and captured Africans to build the former Soviet Union. You know, Russia was not part of that. That was a Western imperial project that involved the United States. The United States is built on genocide of indigenous peoples and on the enslavement of captured Africans. Walter Rodney made this point clearly in How Europe Wanted to Develop Africa. So we're talking about Western colonialism / imperialism. Good. The Americans, the British, the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Danes. These people, I refer to them as the North Atlantic tribes, and they constitute an organization known as NATO. Okay, this is basically Anglo-Saxon outfit. And I'm drawing the line between the Anglo-Saxon people and the Slavic people. And the Russians are part of the Slavic race of people. Because what we have been experiencing on this earth for the past hundreds of years is white supremacy, and white supremacy will be more specific Anglo-Saxon supremacy. Because I don't have a problem with the Russians, because the Russians never captured my ancestors and enslaved them, right? And when you examine the history of the liberation movements in Africa, Russia at the time when it was a former Soviet Union, it provided assistance to the ANC and to other liberation forces that were fighting apartheid South Africa when the United States and Britain and the Western countries were back in apartheid. So I want to get that clear, you know?
Absolutely.
Yes. So now we come to this crisis that we have here with the Ukraine and Russia. And if you listen to the corporate media, the pro-imperialist media, whether it's CNN, CBS, and over in the Atlantic, the BBC, you know, they're whipping up this anti-Russian hysteria, right? That Russia is going to invade the Ukraine and all of that. And it's amazing how they keep pushing that and keep pushing that. And people actually, you know, you have many people, of course, in the United States and other parts who believe that Russia is going to invade the Ukraine. But what is really happening here is the United States is the aggressor. The United States have plans that have been in place for years now to encircle Russia, destroy Russia, and then you control what is referred to as that area, Eurasia. The United States is a global power, global hegemon. What they're doing, the US is the shock troops for Western global domination. And they have an organization called NATO. And NATO is an organization that is a criminal entity. It's a criminal entity. It's bent on on expanding, bringing in new members, and encircling countries like Russia, China, and Iran, because they're afraid of that cooperation or an alliance that Russia, China, and Iran can build. Not because they have a common ideology, but because these three nations have a common enemy. This crisis, the root of this crisis goes back to the breakup of the former Soviet Union in the 1990s. Good. And what constituted what was called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So all of these republics went off as independent entities, right? Belarus, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and all of them. And you have what's called the Russian Federation. But Ukraine, there are Russians who have argued that the Ukraine is very much a part of Russia and such. But the point is that when the Soviet Union broke up, the United States promised Mikhail Gorbachev, who was then the leader of the Soviet Union, that NATO would not expand. But there is no writing, nothing was done in writing. But you know, whether it's in writing or not, the United States and the Western imperialists, they don't keep their promises. I mean, you know what they did with the indigenous people of America, how many treaties they made with them, they broke it. They made many treaties. So getting back to the real aggressor here, right? Now, I just want to tell you something. When the North Atlantic Alliance was established and they signed the treaty at the time, at the end of the Second World War and so, the then communist bloc established the Warsaw Pact as a counter to NATO, because NATO was bent on expansionism. I mean, in passing, let me mention that Colombia, which is in South America, not far from Guyana, applied for membership of NATO. Why would Colombia want to join NATO, right? And why would NATO want to bring Colombia into the alliance. Because if you bring Colombia in, NATO can then transfer missiles and the latest in weaponry to Colombia. That would be a threat to Venezuela, you see, or even to Cuba, because Cuba is just hours out flying from Colombia. But I'm showing you now NATO, one of NATO article, the article in Founding Treaty says that if a member state of NATO is attacked, it's the duty of the others to come to the assistance. Well, that's not the case. Look at what happened in Libya. NATO launched a massive air attack on Libya under the leadership of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011 and bombed the hell out of the place. Libya didn't attack anybody. NATO is an aggressive entity. It's a criminal entity. And the way the world is now, the only country that possesses the capabilities to stand up to US bullyism is Russia. And the Russian people know what a war is like. You see, America had 9/11. America don't know what, the United States don't know what it is for bombs to rain on them. You know, the Soviets, during the second so-called, what Europeans like to call the Second World War. It was not World War. It was a European tribal war. But because we were colonies, they roped us in the fight. We had to go fight for them. Good. So yeah, go on.
No, I'm just gonna say, so this would be called a territorial conflict, right? Is it that they want the Ukraine? They just want the Ukraine territory back? Is that basically what's going on?
Why? Because one of the things is why I mentioned that. I'll get to that. I just finished by saying that the Russians lost during the so-called Second World War 30 million people. The Soviet lost 30 million, and the Nazis, the Germany had more military divisions in there than they had in the whole of Western Europe. The United States at the time was, imagine while American youngsters, American personnel were going to fight the Nazis, you had American big business oiling the Nazi war machinery. George Herbert Walker's Bush father was a banker for the Nazis. They were actually, do you know that Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, the first edition, was dedicated to and paid for by Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Motors. So you had a very close working relationship between the American big business and the Nazis. You know, and today the people, they're still working with the Nazis. And this is where we come to in the Ukraine, right? Because they want to bring the Ukraine into NATO, and they did promise that Ukraine would not come into NATO, but they don't hold to their word, and they want to move strategic missiles and nuclear weapons into Ukraine right under Russia. Now Russia has a right to move its troops along its border. Russia hasn't crossed over, right, into the Ukraine. Russia has a right to protect its territory. Suppose Russia decided to deploy nuclear weapons to Cuba, to Nicaragua, or Venezuela. Is the United States going to be happy with that? So why should Russia sit back and allow America and Britain to plant all of these nuclear weapons upon them? But here it is. You see, they want Ukraine because it's part of encircling Russia and taking control of the entire area. I was listening to a few commentators and they were quoting from Brzezinski's book. And I find a statement that Brzezinski, you know, Marx said that men make the history, but they do not make it as they please and so on, right? But under the circumstances. But what Marx failed to realize is that as much as we might not make it in our own self-critique, people that they're, because the Marxist statement is so economistic, you know, that economics drives everything. But the role of consciousness and the role of the human will, these people actually sit down and plan for decades how they're going to shape the world. And this is what Brzezinski said in his book, The Grand Chessboard. I got some like, he said, the compelling energy issue driving America's policy He says a power that dominates Eurasia would control two of the world's three most advanced and economically productive regions. A mere glance at the map also suggests that the control over Eurasia would almost automatically entail Africa's subordination, rendering the Western Hemisphere and Oceania geopolitically peripheral to the world's central continent. About 75% of the world's people live in Eurasia, and most of the world's physical wealth is there as well, both in the enterprise and underneath the soil. So you see what is going on. That's an area with tremendous wealth, and if you can bring Ukraine into it, then you encircle Russia, and then you go after them eventually. But the idea is to take Russia out, right? That's the plan, but it's going to backfire, because you can see this is not like years during Nixon time when you had the Sino-Soviet conflict, and then Nixon and Kissinger thought they could use the Chinese against the Soviets. Dynamics changed, the world has changed, and this last meeting with Putin and President Xi, they realize what is happening here. China has come out in support of Russia's right to defend the territorial integrity and so on. And it's clear, right? But we are getting all of the lies and the deception and and they keep doing it. The BBC, the CNN, and all of this. And it's important, especially for all who seek the truth, and our African American brothers and sisters. Look what they did. Look what they did recently to Ethiopia. Ethiopians were marching all over Western capitals and in the hundreds of thousands when they realized the plan that the United States was caught supporting the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a terrorist entity to destroy it, bring down Ethiopia. They want to break up Ethiopia, right? And at the same time, to go after Eritrea. They want to drive a wedge between the Eritrean and the Ethiopian alliance. And then suddenly you saw all these hundreds of thousands of people in Ethiopians and so across all the Western capitals calling out CNN as liars and all of that. And this is the pattern, right? So people are waking up because they did the same thing in Libya. They did the same thing. NATO went in to Yugoslavia and bombed Yugoslavia and destroyed Yugoslavia. So you can see this pattern of aggression, and Russia as someone where we are now, and we have to take a stand. And they're pushing. The latest is that the two autonomous region areas in eastern Ukraine, Luhansk and Donetsk, Putin said Russia has recognized them, and in fact they are preparing. The Ukrainian army are attacking them. So this thing here is really the NATO and the United States are pushing this thing, and then to get Russia will eventually have to go in to protect Russian citizens in those areas. And what is happening is you have a group by the name of the Azov Battalion. This is a fascist entity. It's a neo-Nazi outfit, right, that glorifies Hitler. It's a Ukrainian outfit. They took part in the 2014 coup that was backed by the United States to overthrow the then president, who was moving closer to Russia. And when that, at the time, this woman, Victoria Nuland, who's the U.S. Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, and the present advisor, Sullivan. When you listen to these two people, they're not just liars. Victoria Nuland was the point person, right, for the United States dealing with the neo-Nazi groups during the so-called Revolution of Dignity in the Ukraine. You had John McCain. John McCain went down there the year before and spoke to crowds. You could imagine an African revolutionary or the late Fidel Castro coming to Cuba, going to the United States during a protest, or the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, going to the UN, and after UN meeting, going into the streets of the United States to address protesters. And this is what the United States is. The United States is not interested. The United States is not about promoting democracy. The United States is about promoting Anglo-Saxon US domination of the planet. And why I mentioned the Anglo-Saxon thing, it's very important because the official spokesperson for the foreign ministry, Maria Zakharova, this is what she said in her words. She said, the White House hysteria is more revealing than ever. The Anglo-Saxons need a war at any cost. Provocation, misinformation, and threats are a favorite method of solving their own problems. The American military political machine is ready to steamroll through people's lives again. So you see,
Wow.
she is drawing, she is showing you, and this is where we have to. This is the Anglo-Saxon. You know, you heard about the Vandals. You heard about in language we speak about. The place was vandalized. You know, well, the word vandalize is taken from a Germanic tribe, an Anglo-Saxon tribe called the Vandal. When the Vandals move, and they move anywhere, they just destroy, wanton destruction. And this is what they did. You see it today. This is the nature of these people. They destroyed the former Yugoslavia. They destroyed Libya. They destroyed look what they did to Syria. Syria only survived because the Russians went in to provide their support, right? They invaded Grenada. They bombed Panama. When they bombed Panama, thousands of Africans from Panama died who resisted. And they did that. And they have their way. They will invade Cuba. They will invade Venezuela. They'll invade Nicaragua. They beat the drums, because this is about Anglo-white supremacy, more specific, Western domination.
Seem like that's what it's always about. Why does it seem like the makings of World War III? We know it's gonna come one day. At least that's what all the psychic type of people tell you. Does this have the makings of World War III to you?
Well, you know, it's a World War III would be a Pyrrhic victory, because I don't think either side could win here. You see, I unlike some people whose outlook are rooted in the social sciences, I also look at the things theologically, and as a person who follow the good books, both the Bible and the Quran.
Yes.
I agree that there is I'm not now. This here is there is a specificity to these people, to the Anglo-Saxon people. They are warriors, and that's one of the reasons when I say they're warriors, they're unrelenting. They're unrelenting. They're unforgiving. See, Africans, you look at the Battle of Nsondwana in South Africa, where the Zulus defeated the most advanced military war machinery in the world at the time, the British. The Zulus defeated them. And the Zulus told the British to take their weapons, give them safe passage out. They came back. And they flattened Zululand. So what I'm telling you here, we are dealing with a beast. You have to understand the nature of the beast. And as Minister Farrakhan said, you cannot reason with the beast. The beast has no heart. You know, Russia is trying to engage them. Russia's trying to solve this thing through diplomacy. But they're not interested in diplomacy. It is crystal clear they want war.
Man, you said something there. When you said when you brought up the beast, that just hit me.
Yeah,
we, we got to take a second for that to really hit.
yeah. I
Well,
mean, it's important. African American brothers and sisters who miss out. I mentioned the name earlier. You know, we were talking about the great African American singer and actor, Paul Robeson. You
okay,
know,
yes.
yeah, Robeson was persecuted in the United States. He couldn't sing at any hall or any place and all that, and he had to leave and he went to Russia, the then Soviet Union, and this is a country that persecuted, committed genocide against the indigenous people, right? Enslaved Africans,
Mhm.
captured Africans. We had to fight their wars, their civil wars. We had to fight wars and everything, and still we were denied the right. You were denied the right to vote, and everything went through Jim Crow and everything. And their history, as Kwame Ture say, they don't lie sometimes, they lie all the time. So why believe them now? They have a record, a track record of lying. Their lying is consistent.
Now we know Russia to be a big power. The U.S. is a big power. How will ultimately China play a part when this is all said and done, or will they?
Well, I think the Chinese are reading. The Chinese know that this is not just about Russia. This is also going after China. China is a military power, and China is the fastest growing economy in the world. It's taken the United. It's a very powerful, and America realize, that their power, their influence globally is diminishing. In the Caribbean and all over, people are turning towards China for, in terms of technical assistance and aid and all that. Recently, Barbados just signed a thing with China, an agreement with China. And if you know the arrangement that China made in terms of the loans they will provide and how they will service the debt, it's unbelievable. Barbados can get that from the IMF, or the World Bank, or the IMF, World Bank, or any Western financial institution. So they want to tell us, imagine, it started with people like Hillary Clinton right now. They want to tell Africans in the motherland and in the diaspora how we should deal with China. Yet China is the largest investor in the United States. Isn't that somehow disingenuous? These are the people who supported apartheid in Africa, in South Africa, in the frontline states then. And they, at the time when the Chinese were giving scholarships to African freedom fighters, training African freedom fighters for the liberation struggle. And they were supporting apartheid. And they want to come and tell the Africans, how you must deal with the Chinese, as though the African leaders are children.
Well, let me ask you.
Yeah.
I just want to know because this may seem like an easy question, but
Yeah.
I can say, so many people say America, the people are free here. Are probably freer than a lot of other countries. So, besides freedom, what is another reason you could think of that why America fears becoming number two so bad as far as how everyone views who is the world power number one? What is the big, like, why can't somebody else just be looked at as number one? Like, what's the fear in that?
First of all, I don't buy the fallacious narrative from any the Anglo-Saxon that the Chinese want to dominate the world or Russia want to dominate. That's not true, right? That is the United States and Britain pushing this thing, and NATO is controlled and commanded by the United States. There's even a split now. You can see the split emerging in NATO with the position Germany is taking. Good. But getting back to what you mentioned about
America not
freedom.
wanting somebody else to be
Yeah,
looked at as the number one world power.
yeah. Well, before I get there, you mentioned the issue of freedom. People believe that they're free.
Oh yes, people believe that America is the
Mhm.
freest place to live.
Yeah. Well, the very word freedom and the term is highly contested. Because I mean, even human beings, we are given free will to decide whether we will go down the path of truth or the path of falsehood, the path of eternal life or the path of damnation. We've given that free will. But at the end of the day, our Creator is not going to say in the final judgment, well, all those who did evil, all those who were evil, you can go and live and have your world with the devil, and we will go to say, no, 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 no. He is going to destroy you because there's a limit to your freedom. So this bourgeois concept of freedom is an abstraction. Now, for example, I don't want to hear about the right to free speech if I'm hungry. I don't want to hear about the right to assemble, to assemble, if I don't have the right to adequate medical care, right?
Hello.
Because
Nah, okay, I got you.
if I live in a society that if I take in ill now, if I'm ill taken sick, if I got sick now, I don't have to worry about whether I have medical insurance. I can go to a hospital like I did when I was in Libya, resided in Libya. If I'm not feeling well, I go to the nearest hospital. No lineup, no lineup. I'm treated. No one asks me nothing, no question. I'm given what the treatment and I go without paying a cent. Good. I don't have any landlord who's going to come to kick me out of the house that I reside in. I don't have to worry that if I don't pay my university fees in time, I can't write my exam. Right? That's real freedom I'm talking about. But we get this abstract thing about freedom, that liberal bourgeois nonsense about the right to this, and they give you a thing to vote every years in America. You believe you have freedom. But what you keep doing in the United States, as many political scientists, people like Sheldon Wolin and Herbert Aptica and this other guy that wrote Michael Parenti, Democracy for the Few, pointed out, America has been for decades a one-party state, right? A one-party state, but you're fooled because you have two parties competing.
Absolutely.
But they're basically, both of them are expressions of a ruling class. And no ruling class is united in the way they go forward or do things. So when it's one coin with two sides, and what you do every time you vote is you keep changing the party that will govern on behalf of a section of that class that rules, or the ruling class, but you don't change the system. So people have this illusion that voting, Sheldon Wolin calls it inverted democracy. That's what you have, and people believe it. But real democracy is when people have a say in the decisions that impact their lives, when you can have adequate and free medical care, the right to dignity, the right not to be shot in the street because you're black.
Hello.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times is how things are reported is in America where they put so many things out there for us to be distracted. Do you feel like the news where you are in South America is covered in a different way? For me, I would think that I'm getting a sense from you that it's not all like I shouldn't just look at it as Russia is totally at fault for everything. That's what I'm getting from you. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I just want to know, do you feel like the coverage that you receive in the media is a little bit more honest where you are, or is it just the fact that you're educated and knowledgeable of where
Oh,
to get
good
this
question.
good
Good
information
question.
from?
Good question. And that's why, Kira, see, you might have a small program like this, but this what you're doing here is very important, right?
Thank
We
you.
need this type of thing, alternative media, because the corporate, when you listen to these commentators that the pro-imperialist media bring on, I mean, of course they have an agenda. It's crystal clear. But in the Caribbean, you have people who believe they fall for that narrative that Russia is going to attack and Russia's thing. But then there's also people who know that no, this is not the case, because people are watching and they've seen this pattern of US aggression. They're looking at it, and unfortunately, the Caribbean community, CARICOM, brought out a statement, and the statement was unfortunately it was somehow a cowardly statement because some Caribbean leaders, they're the strong ones, but others still they buy into this thing. They're afraid because the Americans like to talk about us as in their backyard,
Mhm.
But we come in the tradition of Maurice Bishop, who said, "In nobody's backyard." So we have these CARICOM leaders who want to, the CARICOM statement that makes it look like they're two, both sides are wrong. Try and settle this thing. Nonsense. This is a clear cut case of one, right, aggressor. You want to expand, you're expanding, you push it. And the whole thing about NATO is to encircle not just Russia, but China. And the Chinese know this. And that's why the Chinese Foreign Ministry issued a statement. They came out in defense of the Russian position, and they called the Americans out for that. I mean, the Chinese president, I think it was sometime last year, addressing the nation and the armed forces of the founded republic. He says that anyone who thinks they can come up against that they can do threaten China. So he said China will bash their head against the wall of steel. That's what he said, you know. But I mean, the Americans, the American empire, the American empire. I've never heard about the democratic empire. It's a contradiction. And the Americans like to talk about who annexed the next. Well, you had 13 colonies, and then you look and see how many they annexed Hawaii. I think the state of Vermont was annexed. They annexed parts of what was part of Mexican territory, and so they have a history of annexing people's land.
All the good people in the world who stand for something, what would you tell them to keep their eyes on concerning this matter?
We have to stand up. I'm not for any sort of armed conflict. I think peace-loving peoples throughout the world and people in every country on this planet have to stand up. People should hit the streets. People should protest and send a message to the United States, the government of the United States, the government of Britain, and certain countries in the West that they're not going to tolerate this. People need to come out because I when you look at what was coming out of Russia, no way President Putin is not a lunatic that he's going to invade uh, Ukraine. But they have created a situation now that they're forcing because has the Ukrainian army has launched an attack of those two small republics, and people are fleeing there and going into Russia. So they're forcing Russia to intervene. And I'm not surprised now because the dynamics do change. And at that time to now, things do change because of the escalation. So if Putin react one way or the other, Russia will have to react to it because Russia cannot sit back and allow NATO and the United States to do what they have to do.
Well, we
Gerald?
know America's going to be right behind it because we
Yeah.
always get into other people's, you know, mishaps or wars or
Yeah.
situations. So I don't know. I guess I can talk from a spiritual place, and you can just and perhaps I kind of asked you this when I asked the World War III question, but it just spiritually seems like there will be impending doom no matter what. It just feels like we're on the edge of something happening. I mean, I don't think it's just me, but I just feel something in the air that something is just gonna brew. It's just gonna happen anyways.
That is inevitable. That is going to come. I don't think that we can get away from that because they have these right wing pastors in the United States, these right wing evangelicals. Some of
Yes.
them, some of them would be beaten. They would be happy if there's a war tomorrow. They want a war because they believe that a global war will hasten that bring about Armageddon and hasten the coming of the Messiah. That's
Mhm.
how lunatic they are. That's what they believe.
Now, a good point
You,
too
you
is
have
that
no.
I heard. I heard
You have
somebody
to.
say when a country is in debt or needs money, they want to go to war. So there may be another reason why the U.S. wants to be in these affairs to go to war to make more money. That
Well,
could be a possibility.
the U.S. economy is a war economy. The military-industrial complex. The U.S. must have wars. That's the military. The United States spend billions of dollars on weapons of mass destruction. The cost of one aircraft carrier in the United States Naval Fleet. Do you know how many hospitals it can build? What the cost of one aircraft carrier can build at least they figure about 50 hospitals with all the modern thing, uh, today technology and everything. America spend billions on weaponry, and you have people homeless people, right? Homeless people, and uh, you don't even have free medical care. You have Cuba that has been on the embargo for more than 50 years, more than 50 something years, almost six, and yet in Cuba with all the pressure and everything and shortage of because they can't get Cuba's manufacturing its own medicines, manufacturing vaccine for the COVID-19. And you could go in a hospital in Cuba and you get your eyes tested without pain, and you get your glasses and you get your medical care and all that, with all that. And you have the United States, a powerful country, and you have homeless people and people you have to pay medical care is an expensive thing in the United States, and you spend billions on weaponry because that goes to the military industrial complex. And then along now with the military industrial complex, you have the prison industrial complex. You have the prison industrial complex. So incarceration, there's more in terms of America has more people in prison than if you put it alongside China or Russia. And as you check out African Americans and they're there. So from slavery, we went from enslavement now to another form of enslavement in mass incarceration in the prison industrial complex. So they need weapons they make that's how they make huge amount. They destroyed Iraq on the basis of a lie, and then you get Halliburton of it. Dick Cheney, the former vice president, is on the board. You destroy it, and then your own people get the contracts to go into rebuild. The Iraqis pay them to rebuild, and that's what they do, right? That's what they do.
Now, I have to say, I'm concerned that a lot of people here aren't concerned about what's going on. I mean, like I said, people are more concerned about what's going on in their favorite celebrity life. But we have a few minutes here. And Mr. Gerald, I would like you to give us some takeaways to take with us to make sure that and I know you kind of went over one aspect, but some takeaways from this conversation that we've had today.
Sister, you just mentioned about what's going on in the lives of celebrities, and you're so right. You see, it's part of what is called the dumbing down. That's where they want you at. And that's the part of where people believe they have this freedom. It's an illusion because they want you're more. Someone was showing me something. I could imagine. I think I mentioned it to you some time ago. Uh, this woman who have so many likes and how many follow her. She have that. You remember what's it?
You talking about Kim Kardashian?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's exactly who I was talking about. Actually,
Yeah.
her
And she has
husband
more likes.
Kanye.
Yeah. More
Yeah,
people follow her than Minister Farrakhan, who's preaching the truth in God's word.
they won't even let him on social media anymore.
That's
So
right. So this is nothing new. I mean, look at Noah, Prophet Noah, or Noah. Noah went to them and said, "Listen, the Creator is going to destroy this place, right? Change, man." They dismissed him. Good. Until when it started, and now rain started pouring, and the last minute, and God locked the doors of that ark, locked it. Because he know when they come knocking at it. But what the point I'm making is, until people, that's where they keep you dumbed down entertainment. It's just like what the Romans, when things were bad in Rome, the Roman emperors will bring out, open up the amphitheater, get the gladiators out, a week of celebration and drinking and They give away food and wine and entertain, and people feel nice. It was part of the dummy down to distract them from the real issues that Rome had to deal with. And America is a continuation. When the American Empire, the way they operate, and so it's just a form of uh, a replica of Rome.
I'll ask you this one last time.
Yeah.
What do you see happening here with Ukraine and Russia?
I think based on the latest reports with the Ukrainian army assisted by neo-Nazi paramilitaries that are attacking the the two small republics that are that are believe in strengthening and maintaining close relations with Russia, and the Russian citizens are fleeing. I think Russia will have to intervene one way or the other. I don't think Russia is going to sit back and allow this thing to escalate to a point where it threatens Russia's very existence. But I do believe that if not now, the roads are leading all the one way or the other. I do believe that and this is not being pessimistic. This is not about beating down the road sometime. I don't know when. I think we are going to head down the path to a global conflict.
Oh my God.
You know,
Yes.
there's a man by the name of, I just want to share this with you, P.R. Sarkar. He was a great Indian scholar, and he developed an entire theory called PROUT, Progressive Utilization Theory. And one of his disciples, Ravi Batra, wrote a book that came out in the late 70s or late 80s. Early it is called of the collapse of communism, the Eastern Bloc. And he was a professor of economics, I think, at Southern Methodist University in the United States. Anyhow, when he tried to publish that book, nobody wanted it to publish it. They said, this guy gonna be crazy. You're telling us that within this period here, the communist countries are going to collapse. And when the Berlin Wall came down and the former Eastern Bloc countries collapsed, they were all flocking to interview him. And he explained that the ancient Hindus theory, one that the Prout is based on, and they explained, and he said that the next war, they predicted the next war. He predicted that the capitalism is going to, you'll see there are all the symptoms and the things, the signs of capitalism collapsing as a global system. He said around in the 12, 13, 15 period. And we are seeing that. And they realize it too. It's going to collapse. And he said that he predicted that the coming war is going to be between the West, the United States, the West, and China.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gerald Piera.
Yeah.
I'll get it right next time.
It doesn't matter. We're all Africans. And you are an African in the United States, as Kwame Ture said, period.
Let us, if you have any website or any column that you have that you want people to go check out, here's the time now to let them know where they can find your work.
You can go to, we have an organization. I don't know if you've checked our website, Organization for the Victory of the People. Yeah. That's WWIII Guyana.org. And we have the George James Institute. That's our educational arm. We name it George James Institute after the great Guyanese academic who wrote the book Stolen Legacy. It's a classic. In that book, he argued, he died under mysterious circumstances in the United States. He showed that what is referred to as called Greek philosophy is really stolen from the African Kemetic mystery system, So, the European things they cannot understand, they call mysteries. But it's science. Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you so much. I'll make sure to add all the information into the
yeah,
description. And I just want to remind people to check out CareDangerousTalk.com is our full website where you can check all the full episodes. We have links to go to the podcast if you just want to listen to the show. Also have blogs and articles. More coming soon. Hopefully, I can get Mr. Gerald on there to write an article for us one day. And videos and all kind of things, and merch will be coming back soon. So I want to thank you again for joining us and breaking down the international conflict that's going on. And
and
I just
thank
want to
you
tell
because
people, go ahead.
this is dangerous talk for white supremacy. It is dangerous talk for Anglo-Saxon supremacy. It's dangerous talk for imperialism. Yeah. And
That's
you're doing this. You have to do this in the tradition of Malcolm X. All those also, all those who came before. You know, we have to take up. We have to carry on where they left off. You know, we cannot give up. We cannot surrender. Kwame Ture said, "We go down fighting."
well, I'm trying so hard. I don't know.
You're a truth warrior.
I don't know how they did it, but I'm trying as hard as I possibly can, and I think
Yeah,
that I'm thankful that I have you as a one of those people that help
baby.
to guide me. And I just want to tell people to make sure they buckle
Welcome,
up
sister.
and,
Welcome.
and stay prayed up and
Yeah,
and keep growing that relationship with God, because it may be some tough days ahead.
we need a few more like you doing this. You know, it's important, and I hope you stay in it. And with God's blessing, continue doing what you're doing. Yeah,
Thank you so much, and to you as well,
yeah.
and
Thank
all
you,
the people,
sister.
and love to all the people where you are. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Gerald A. Perreira from Guyana, theologian, political activist, and writer. And you're watching Kera Dangerous Talk.